This week, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt announced that she is officially leaving the Trump administration. And look, there is a lot to say about her time in the briefing room, her role in the Trump era, and her departure, believe me. But I just want to start with what is not problematic about Karoline Leavitt leaving the White House. I mean, there are more than a few armchair critics out there who have come at Karoline for her decision to leave the job just 19 months into Trump's second term, saying she wants to spend more time with her family after the birth of her second child. And I have plenty of issues with how Karoline Leavitt has done this job that I will get into in a moment, and I've been doing my own version of the briefing since she started the job. But let me just say at the outset that is not one of them. It's really hard to have a baby while in a senior job at the White House. And believe me, there are unfortunately not hundreds or even dozens of past examples to model your experience after, including how long to stay in the job. I mean, I was 6 months pregnant when I returned to be President Obama's communications director. Yes, there I am, very pregnant in that photo. Great photo. There you go. My kids were 2 and 5 years old when I went to work for President Biden as his press secretary. That's a big part of why I only stayed in that job for 15 months, because I wanted to spend time with my kids, too. So in my opinion, that's not where the critiques of Karoline Leavitt should be. There are, however, plenty of other things that need to be said about Leavitt's tenure and how it damaged a job I was honored to serve in, as were many, many before me in both parties. One thing, there is how she saw the role. I mean, that's a fundamental basic problem with how she served. And just to give you a sense, I mean, every single press secretary during their first briefing lays out how they see the job, or they're asked about it during the first briefing if they don't say it themselves. And there are a lot of examples of this. But just to give you a sense here, here's what I said on the first day of my first briefing. We have a common goal, which is sharing accurate information with the American people. If the president were standing here with me today, he would say he works for the American people. I work for him, so I also work for the American people. Now, I thought about that and what I was going to say. You know you're going to be asked. I spoke with President Biden about that because I wanted to make sure it portrayed how he felt about that particular role. And I conveyed it that way because that's essentially what the job is. Yes, speaking on behalf of the president, but also delivering to the best of your ability accurate information to the American public. Does every press secretary screw up from time to time? Yeah, sure, I did. Are there days when you don't have all the information you need to answer every single question? Sure. But every day, your North Star, if you are doing the job right, is providing information about what the president is doing, how he's trying to make people's lives better, how the government is addressing whatever the crisis is of the moment, including ones they're not handling so well. Your goal is to serve the public on behalf of the president. And it's clear that Karoline Leavitt never saw her job that way. I mean, this was her first day and what she had to say.
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people. And that's exactly what this administration is doing.
So easy to say true things about the president because he's doing such popular things. Says Karoline Leavitt, just 1 week after Trump kicked off his presidency by pardoning more than 1,000 January 6 rioters. Not popular, that thing. As are many of the other things he's done. Not popular. The job under this administration has never been about being a purveyor of truth or information, or about answering tough questions every day, including on the days when it wasn't always pleasant. It's been about telling the version of the truth according to the serial liar who sits in the Oval Office. Reporters in the room don't matter. The American people who rely on the reporting from the reporters in the room doesn't matter. She's never seen her job as working for the American people as a public servant. She's seen it as working for one man, much like many other people in the administration do, like, say, Trump's Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who acts as though he's still Trump's personal attorney and not a person leading what is supposed to be an independent Department of Justice. Karoline Leavitt has spent these last 19 months putting Trump's personal interests over her professional duties of the role she is serving in. And that has meant lying to the public for Trump's benefit whenever and wherever she could, even about absolutely absurd things, like when she emphatically repeated Trump's lies about vandalism at the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool.
The vandalism is very real, despite what Tim Walz wants to say. It's an imaginary problem. No, it is not. It's a very real problem. These deranged individuals, many of them longtime donors to the Democrat Party, to Barack Obama, to Act Blue, that have been vandalizing and desecrating our federal monument.
Not true, any of it. And we know it's not true because the Trump administration admitted in court that it was their own shoddy contractor who caused damage to the reflecting pool. What a silly thing to lie about. You never want to lie, but what an absurd thing. Or how about the time she said this about the cost of Trump's ridiculous ballroom project?
Back to the ballroom, I'm afraid. I just wanted to ask, because in July, the White House said that it would cost $200 million. Yesterday, the president said $300 million. Is $300 million now the operative figure, and why did it go up by so much?
$300 million is the figure, and again, it's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime.
Also not true. I mean, thanks to reporting, we know Trump's ballroom will cost much more than $300 million, and a significant portion of that is coming from taxpayers. In fact, contractor estimates obtained by the Washington Post found that the project will cost at least $600 million, with more than half of that coming from taxpayers. And who could forget the time she tried to explain away the weird discoloration and bandages on Trump's hands by saying they were the result of vigorous handshaking. Remember this?
As for the bandages on the hand, we've also given you an explanation for that in the past. The president is literally constantly shaking hands. The Oval Office is like Grand Central Terminal.
I mean, and when she couldn't lie to reporters, she often resorted to just picking aggressive fights, like this moment in the wake of the tragic ICE shooting of Renee Good.
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed it unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat.
Now, don't get me wrong. The relationship between the press and the White House is supposed to be adversarial by design. I mean, the press in the room are supposed to push for more access, for more information. And there are times when it's absolutely appropriate for the press secretary to push back. But Karoline Leavitt didn't want to engage in good faith with those reporters and their tough questions. And so instead, she did everything she could to reshape that briefing room into her own personal safe space where she rarely had to answer a tough question, hardly ever. I mean, she only briefed once or twice a week max. Most press secretaries brief 5 days a week, including when they're traveling. Sometimes she simply yelled at the real reporters in the room. And over the course of time, she filled the room with MAGA sycophants. Every day she began her briefings with a question from what she called the new media seat, where basically MAGA podcasters could enter the briefing room. And during periods of time where there were a lot of other things they could be asking about, they posed questions like this one.
Sure. Will you guys also consider releasing the president's fitness plan? He actually looks healthier than ever before. Healthier than he did 8 years ago, and I'm sure everybody in this room could agree. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy? And is he eating less McDonald's?
I can confirm the president is in very good shape.
I mean, first of all, come on now. Come on now. But more importantly, that's real hard-hitting journalism there, isn't it? From those new media seats. And there were more and more and more of those people in the briefing room taking up more and more time and space in the briefing room and in the Oval Office. This is not what the briefing room is supposed to look like. This is not who is supposed to get oxygen in the White House press corps. The hardest part of your job as White House press secretary shouldn't be keeping a straight face while someone asks why Donald Trump is looking so svelte. That's what happened there. And the thing is, reshaping the briefing room has real consequences beyond just irritating the actual reporters in the room. That room is supposed to be where the American people get answers about what their government is doing. And when an administration doesn't take that responsibility seriously, the American people are the ones who pay the price.